So, Huishen, over to you to introduce the topic for tonight's webinar.
Just one thing before I introduce the topic is that one of us, our project manager, have put in a link in the chat box. For those who do not want to put their questions in the MS Team chat, y'all can go to the link, click the link, and then y'all can put your questions inside that link anonymously. So for today, the subject of our panel discussion is, are formal degrees a thing of the past for the engineering sector? Degrees are seen as the traditional route to professional engineering and are currently a requirement to be recognized as a PE or CEng. However, are they the best preparation for aspiring engineers? On our panel, we have 3 professional engineers and 1 aspiring engineer. Let me pass back to Andy.
So now to get started, let's ask our aspiring young engineer to quickly introduce himself in a couple of minutes. Then I'll ask the other panelists to introduce themselves. So Juan Ho, tell us a little bit about yourself in 2 minutes.
Sure. I am Juan Ho. I am a student in Aerospace Engineering. I am currently the head of publicity in the Institute of Engineers. I like to do small robotic projects on the sidelines whenever I am free. And for my future goal, I would like to become an aircraft designer. Right, passing on.
Okay, great. Graham, would you like to say a few words, please?
Absolutely, a pleasure. Pleasure to be with you all tonight. So Graham Horn, I graduated as a mechanical engineer out of Heriot-Watt University back in 1988. So I've been at this a long time. I've spent my career between the UK, France, and Singapore. I've worked for the same company throughout all of this time that designs and manufactures and services equipment, petroleum equipment for the production of oil and gas. So because of that, I've managed to go to many, many different parts of the world, partake in, opportunities to partake in discussions with different people around the world, and just had a really enjoyable career developing that.
Thank you, Graham. So John, can I ask you to say a few words to us, please?
Certainly. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. John Smith. I started my career as an engineering apprentice with British Nuclear Fuels many, many years ago. They very kindly sponsored me through university, so I got a degree in mechanical engineering from Liverpool University in the UK. And since then, I've had extensive engineering, supply chain and business experience in Europe, North America, Middle East, North Africa and Asia Pacific, with multinational companies including Suntory, who are my current employers, Coca-Cola, Frito-Lay and Unilever. So I'm now the Chief Supply Chain Officer for Suntory Beverage and Food. I run a $9 billion global supply chain with 54 manufacturing plants across the world. And I absolutely love my job.
Thank you, John. Chee, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Chee. So I studied mechanical engineering, graduated. After graduation, went on to do my master's degree in nuclear energy. Graduated from Cambridge a couple of years back, well, 10 years now. Went on to work in a nuclear power station, and most recently I'm running a transformation department, transformation projects within my organization in Singapore here. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Chee. That's great. So you can also see Kogi, our branch chairman, down at the bottom of the screen. I'm not going to ask Kogi to introduce himself right now, but I will ask you, Kogi, to say a few words at the end. So we welcome you a little bit later on. I'd like to get it right into the first questions, if I can, and maybe the first one for Graham. So Graham, in your personal experience, how has having a degree helped you in your career?
Yeah. So as I say, it was a long time ago I got my degree, but it was definitely an essential entry point to my first job. And you know, as I say, entry point, I would not have been invited to partake in the interviews and apply for the job of a graduate engineer at the time, working for the company I joined, which was FMC Technologies. So it's absolutely essential, I think, as the entrance into what you're doing. I think after that, you kind of build up your own repertoire and experience and reputation based on what you do. But it's for me, it's very much about a proof that you're able to learn. I think that's the the most useful thing about a degree is that's what it demonstrates.
So Hui Shen, would you like to ask Juan Ho?
So Juan Ho, how do you hope a degree will help you in your future career?
Well, I hope that a degree will allow me to get into more interesting jobs, such as like designing engineer or maybe even a researcher. And I will also hope that this degree will allow me to have more job availability across like an amount of engineering sectors of jobs. And also I would wish that these degrees would allow me to get into a job which is high paying or well paid for what is doing.
Okay, that's great. So John, what have you got any comments about this? What's how has a degree helped you in your career, which has changed direction in a few different times?
Yeah, no, I think just building really on Graham's point, it establishes I think a whole lifelong process of learning skills. You know, the world is changing ever faster, and as engineers, we have to absolutely stay current. You need to be able to figure things out for yourself. You know, you can't be spoon-fed everything. And to me, you know, the skills that you learn, not just in terms of basic knowledge that you pick up through your degree, which obviously provides a great foundation, but the learning skills that you pick up are then applied time after time after time forever. So invaluable.
Okay, Chee, have you got any thoughts you'd like to add to that on this topic?
Yeah, I think Graham and John has covered it quite nicely, and I think from a personal experience perspective, I've definitely benefited a lot from the training that I got throughout the university life. You know, the ability to think through questions or problem statements in an organization in a systematic way. That has been really, really helpful, and that has really helped me along my career, whether I'm doing a technical work or dealing with business transformation. The mindset and the training has really helped me a lot. So yeah, definitely something very, very useful, valuable for me. Thanks.
All right, thanks for that. So I think we've established that a degree is quite useful and helps you at least get your foot in the door and gives you a bit of basic knowledge and training, perhaps. But now I want to move on to a slightly different aspect, which is maybe this is one for you, John. When hiring new staff, and in your case, it's not just engineering staff, it's a wide range of staff, but I'm going to come to the other panelists who are more involved with engineering in a minute. Do you only choose from those with the best degrees? I mean, I'm thinking very much that this is polytechnics. Polytechnics are not always thought of as being the best degrees, although, well, you maybe want to talk about that a bit later on, some of you. But if not, what else do you look for and why? What are your thoughts?
Okay. A number of thoughts. The answer specifically to the question is, for me, no, it's not about hiring the people with the so-called best degrees. I'm not even sure what best degrees really means. I certainly want to hire the smartest people I can find, but degrees, to me, just one part of that. but I think very much about 3 A's. The third A is academic. So yes, I do want smart people, obviously. But for me, before just simply smart people, I want people with the right attitude and people who demonstrate the ability to apply their knowledge and their skills. Frankly, I've met a lot of very, very smart academic people who, as I would describe it, struggle to tie their own shoelaces. Just because they're super smart doesn't mean they have the ability to apply their knowledge and their skills, and often doesn't necessarily equate to having the right attitude towards learning and applying and bring themselves to be very present and active in our business. So for me, it's the 3 A's: attitude, application, and academics.
Well, let's now think a bit more about perhaps engineering. I mean, Chee, you probably have to hire engineers from time to time, and you know, what got any thoughts about what do you look for when you're interviewing?
I think adaptability is definitely one of the criteria that I look out for. You know, just building on what John was saying earlier, we live in an environment where things, you know, change ever so quickly. There's a phrase that we throw around a lot in our organization: change is the only constant this day, right? There's nothing that's going to stay static. So you need to be able to think outside of the box, applying whatever knowledge that you've learned in the past and apply it in a new context. And that's ultimately, that's the spirit of engineering, isn't it? Think through, keep towards new technology, think about how you could adapt and apply it in a new situation. Probably Graham, something to add to that, Graham?
Yeah, absolutely, Chee. I think I agree entirely. Adaptability is something that's a must with an engineer. You need someone who's able to adapt to the situation the right way. But building on what John was saying, attitude for me is probably the most important thing, and it's a very difficult thing to gauge. It's a very difficult thing to measure, and you can only really do that, you know, through a 1 hour interview or whatever. It's very difficult to get that out, but you can certainly probe and push to try and get the best of people in the attitude. And that doesn't mean everybody should be exactly the same, by the way. I believe strongly that we need diversity in the teams that you build, so people with different attitudes, different experiences, different backgrounds can come together and be much stronger by collectively sharing. But the attitude is when you create the right environment to encourage people to partake, to share, and to work collectively. So open to listening, encouraging those that are a little bit more timid to put forward their ideas, not being afraid to sort of tell those that are a little overtaking the conversation to be a little bit quiet and let the others speak up a bit. So I think attitude for me is a very important feature of when I'm hiring somebody. Yeah, but engineering or not, yes.
So I'm thinking particularly about Polytechnic university level people often do internships, and they do internships. Maybe they do them at your companies, I don't know, but I know they go around Singapore doing internships. Do you value that, or would you still take someone who's got the best degree? What's your thoughts? Who would like to take that one? John, you're waving your hands around. Carry on.
Absolutely. We need more people who've got the academic qualifications and practical experience to go with it. I would encourage everybody in this call not just to grab every opportunity, but go find opportunities. If the opportunities aren't there, go look for them, search them out. To me, internships are worth their weight in gold.
So Graham, do you take internship people sometimes?
Absolutely. So I've hired people. Maybe I don't know. I've probably hired close to 1,000 engineers in my working career, in different places, different locations around the world, in different languages. And the internship for me is one of the best possible ways to get to know the person. You know, I was talking about attitude. Very difficult to gauge attitude during a interview, especially if someone could be a little bit nervous in the interview and not necessarily present themselves in you know their best features, as it were, or their best selves. But when you come and work for somebody for 3-4 months or 6 months or whatever the internship looks like, or whether it's a work experience or sandwich course or however it's structured, when you come and work for a longer period of time, you get to know the person. Now you have coffee together, you have lunch together, there's an opportunity to share experiences. There's an opportunity to see how that person fits into the team. And I think it's very important, because for the student doing the internship, it's an opportunity to see, is this an environment I really want to work in? Is this something that's going to be good for me? And you know, and if the case is no, it's not, well, there's no face lost. It's just an internship. That's okay. You can go away and take a different direction out of that. Whereas if it's your first job and after 6 months you hate it, that's a bit of a problem, right? And for the employer, I think that's also superb, because you get to know the person. You're saying, hey, is this person really going to fit in with my team? Have they got the right, you know, they fit culturally into what we're trying to do here? And, you know, if the answer is yes, you know, I've hired many people who've done internships for me just because of that. And without going through formal, complex processes, I've just said, okay, you want to stay? You can stay.
Yeah, and Andy, if I can just jump back in, I mean, from my own personal experience, you know, I am forever grateful that I did an apprenticeship to start off with, but then through my sponsorship, through the degree, you know, each summer I went back to the company and worked in research and development. I worked in a nuclear power station one summer. I worked on a huge maintenance project on the final summer. It was just fantastic experience. And as Graham's saying, you know, I quickly figured out what things I really enjoyed doing and what I was passionate about, and also figured out what I wasn't so passionate about. And as Graham said, you know, it's a great way to do that. It's 3 months. It's not the be all and end all. It's, you know, none of it's a disaster. It's all a learning experience, and you know, you take the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I wouldn't have missed that for this world. It was a terrific experience, and again, I think then absolutely helped accelerate my career when I did graduate.
Okay, well, I'm going to turn this round on you now. We've got a question in the chat box which you've half answered. I'm going to turn this round on you guys now and say, well, you said in the first answer that you would only interview people who had a degree. So you had a degree to get your CV on the table. Now, supposing you've only got a diploma or some lesser, let's not say lesser, some other degree, some other qualification, but you've done 2 or 3 internships, you know what you want, you're passionate that you want to join the particular company you've gone to, you might not even give them an interview because they might not have got through the process. What's your thoughts? Am I wrong?
No, I'll be honest. These days, I think you do need to get a degree to get through the door. And we can argue right or wrong, but I do think, you know, for professional engineering status, you need to demonstrate that level of ability, education, etc., etc. I mean, you know, let me sort of throw the question back in a different way. You know, are you going to go to a doctor that's not got a degree? I don't think so. I want professional engineers. I want professional engineers that are academically smart and have good practical application. And I don't make any apologies.
Graham.
So similar to John, I want somebody with a degree. But if that person has been doing internships in my company, and they may, you know, internships can be offered in all sorts of different levels. They don't all have to be degreed engineer type level. They can be it could be a technician level or something else. And that person is demonstrating all the attributes that I want, and I just like them, right? I actually have to like the person, yeah. But if I like them and just feel they're engaged well, I might have a conversation about them and say, you want to achieve this, you need to get your degree. You're going through a course which is not going to lead you to the qualification that is going to get you there. Are you prepared to do further studies afterwards while working for us? I'll sponsor you through that. because I want you to come back and work for me afterwards. So I think there's a little bit of opportunity through being an apprentice or being a internship or sandwich or whatever it is to get openings and get opportunities that wouldn't be available to you unless you were brave enough to go and do that internship in the first place.
Yeah, and I was that guy that Graham's just talking about. I did a 4-year apprenticeship. I got a higher national diploma, but I knew that was going to limit where I could go in terms of career. So I took the plunge and went and did a 3-year full-time degree with a sponsorship, thankfully.
Chee, you have anything you'd like to add to that?
No, absolutely. I mean, I had similar experience as well. I did a diploma, which was very hands-on, ever so grateful. You learn a lot of things hands-on. I was fixing cars and doing weldings, fixing air conditioning units. But they're just fundamentally different things that you look out for when you move from moving from diploma to degrees and then to masters. The training's different. The things that you get trained on are different. So, and again, the question, whether someone has I guess it depends on the job that you're looking for. If you're looking for something which is more of a repetitive type of things and doesn't require a lot of lateral thinking, maybe, with that different type of degree would be suitable. But then if you need something else, maybe a degree would put you at a more advantageous position. And I guess the reality of working live is that if you put someone in front of a client, the client has to be confident that, yeah, okay, I'm putting someone who's qualified, right? We can say everything about, yes, this person's brilliant, but if there's no qualification, how would you sell the person within a split second? You probably have 10 seconds off the client. You say, well, this person has no degree, but he's brilliant. I can't think about, okay, let me go to the next person. What about that? So, yeah.
I know when I was selecting CVs, sometimes I would also look at what hobbies and interests that people do, because it shows they have a wider view of the world. And Hui Shen, you had a question I think you wanted to put to Juan Ho.
Juan Ho, do you have any other activities or hobbies or sports or etc. outside your studies which might support your CV, like maybe even service learnings? Yeah.
I do actually host service learning quite often, where I would lead a group of volunteers to events to help out the needy disabled people, young students, or even the elderlies with our knowledge in the engineering sectors. So from this activity, I think it may support my CV, as I will gain like leadership experience and event hosting experience to lead group events or projects. Adding on, I also go for like competitions such as like drone racing, where we would modify drones to our needs to compete against other schools. And I think this would also support my CV, as it will also show that I would compete in the field to be the best I could be.
So just for anybody who's listening, of course, although Juan Ho's at a polytechnic in Singapore, the particular level that you're at is junior college stroke, for anybody overseas, A-level type of level. So not yet had a chance to do internships, but I'm sure that you will do when you get the opportunity later on. Okay, so let's think about something else now then. We've talked about the value of getting a formal degree. A formal degree is full of curriculum, and maybe Chee, I might start with you on this one. So you've got a whole curriculum in these formal degrees. Is it the right curriculum? Is it something that's going to be useful in the workplace? Do you think when you did your degree, you learned a whole load of stuff, as we all did? Do you use it? Is it worth doing from that point of view? Does the subject degree matter, or does Uncle Google provide everything that we need these days? Thoughts?
Yeah, I must admit, some of the things I've learned and struggled through my exam, probably never used them beyond the exam itself. But was it a waste? No. I mean, for a start, I never know what I was going to do, right? If you're an aircraft designer, you need to know a lot about, for example, John Hole. You need to know about fluid, you need to know about material properties. But I guess for myself, I didn't deep dive into the level of technical details. So some of the things that I learned, I didn't really use it directly in my job. But it helps because in the workplace itself, you might interact with people doing different stuff, doing different position. You could relate to what they're talking about, and that is the advantages that you're bringing to the table. That's your value, right? Because the person that you're talking to, you might not have the depth of knowledge, but actually you know roughly the things. And the rest of it, yes, you try to do some more research, read up about it. And especially on the co-curriculum stuff, I mean, outside of academic, I think co-curriculum, especially in an education setup in university, co-curriculum is so important, and it's probably often overlooked, especially, I guess, at least at my time, in an Asian setting where I studied in Malaysia, where people are too focused on academic, but actually you miss a big opportunity by not participating, because you could have tried different things. I remember when I was doing my master's, I actually did a course on museum studies, and that was one of the things that actually got me to my interview, because that topic itself built a bit of a rapport with the interviewer, and it's like, oh, that's an interesting thing. Nothing to engineering. It's just because I did something on museum studies. Yeah, so I think it's really useful.
Okay, Graham, thoughts on that one, perhaps?
Yeah, sort of building on what Chee said, and reflecting a little bit about my own career. So, I mean, I started out as a design engineer, and I worked as a design engineer for 3-4 years. I think it was around about that, maybe 5 years. And then I moved into manufacturing. I moved into manufacturing because I was working as a design engineer doing dispositions for the manufacturing shop, in fact, and I loved it. I thought it was great. It was a great opportunity to do something different. And I built on that, and I ended up doing production management, and then strangely enough, I switched into technical sales from there, and ended up being a general manager one day, and leading our international businesses. But when I think back on my curriculum prepared me in different ways for each of those different steps. Some of it was just an ability to ask the right questions, learn from the people around me the right way. Some of it was relevant that came up later in my career that I didn't really expect it to come in. So I'm currently in a slightly different role. I've moved out of general management. I'm in the twilight of my career, and I've gone back almost full circle into a product management role now, where I'm leading a strategy and product management team. So I've been involved in a lot of digital and at school I hated electrical. I mean, that was a terrible subject for me. But now I'm getting all involved in all of these things and actually loving it and finding a lot of interesting stuff here. So I think even later on, many years later, it comes back in that fundamental that you've built or you've absorbed at that stage works for you later on in a different way. You just never know when you're going to use it. Yeah. And maybe the other piece of that is going through a course that's got all sorts of diverse parts to it, be it materials or thermodynamics or fluid dynamics, wherever it's got in there. It gives you a chance to see what you kind of like, and it helps you orientate yourself a little bit to get started, which I think is very important, because I think you've got to like what you're doing. You're going to work, it's important you enjoy it. Yeah, it's like John said.
So, John, I'm quite certain that you would have learned stress analysis and gone through all those extremely long equations that when we used to do them longhand, they filled the entire page. How much of that do you use today? And did it help you in your current job?
All of it. I hated it. No, I completely agree with Graham that there's so many different pieces of that big puzzle that you cover over 3 or 4 or 5 years, however many you're doing, that just come back into play so many different times and often in sort of maybe unusual places. But like Graham, you know, I did design engineering, I did project management, I did production, I did maintenance, I did operations, and so many of those different fundamental pieces that you cover as part of your degree in mechanical engineering came in useful at all sorts of different times. And again, as Graham said, as you go through the career, you know, often it just gives you that innate ability to ask really difficult questions, and everyone goes, "How the heck did he know that?" Which is always great fun as well.
So I suppose out of all of us, we're everybody else is an engineer, and we've sort of used sort of facets of engineering, although maybe not everything that we learn. But you're a little bit different in that you were you were trained as an engineer.
No, I'm an engineer.
Okay, you are an engineer. Sorry, yeah. But you're working in a rather different type of job now. So is an engineering degree a good foundation for even the kind of job that you do?
Hugely valuable, because again, engineering's about data, it's about science, it's about logic. And I tell you, these days in running a global end-to-end supply chain, you need all of that and a whole lot more. So yes, the skills, the techniques, the logic, the thinking that engineering trains you, perfect.
So just to remind sorry.
I may have strayed from the path, but I've not strayed that far.
And still, what the fundamentals of what you learned still help you even today.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so Hui Shen, let's see what Juan Ho has to say.
Juan Ho, you are studying aerospace engineering, right? So what else would you like to have included in your degree course?
So currently I have yet to reach the final chapter of my studies, and I am not sure of the full course I am going to take. I don't know what else they will give me, like such as it would teach me like the laws in year 3. Would it teach me like business with engineering aircraft in the year 3? So for that, I can't really be certain yet.
Let me just remind everybody, please put your questions in the chat box. If there's anything you'd like to ask of the panel, please pop them in there. There's one question in there which is quite related to what we've just been talking about. We talked about things we learn on engineering degrees. We talked about changing career path. But should we include business studies in engineering and perhaps other topics as well to broaden out engineering degree curricula? Anybody got any thoughts on that? Who would like to take that one first?
Yeah. Go on, Graham.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question, and I'm not absolutely sure that we should at a very early stage include business studies. My belief is you need to get the fundamentals right in the engineering space first. I see this a lot, that people are very anxious to become the supervisor, the manager, to move up the chain because that's the way they see they're going to grow their careers. And there's truth in that, don't get me wrong. But there's a lot of sense in having a solid foundation on which you're building your management career afterwards. Even if it's not that what you're managing, it gives you a legitimacy in a space, which I think is tremendously important. So as much as we're anxious to get forward and to win the big salary, I believe actually you could do very well in an engineering environment. You could become a bit of a subject matter expert. maybe start to lead some engineering groups, build on that, and then diversify yourself into other areas, and trust that the whoever you're working with, the employer of choice, is going to be smart enough to help you evolve those skills at a later date. Personally, I had no business in my degree at all. It was a pure, in fact, it was offshore mechanical engineering is what I did, and I don't regret any of that. And I would have had no time. I wouldn't have given up any of my subjects that I had in that, even the ones I didn't like. I wouldn't have given them up in order to take business as part of that at that point in time. I really don't think you can be legitimate in a business type approach until you have a solid background and experience.
Chee, did you do any business in your degree studies?
Not during my undergraduate. When I was doing my master's, we did a little bit of business studies. It was mainly on investment and portfolio accounting type of subject. But I do agree with what Graham's saying. I think having the understanding of a business, right? You come from different angle. You have people who study accountancy. They'll come in from a spreadsheet perspective, looking at the numbers go moving up and down. I guess for us, the added benefit is that, yeah, later on in your career, one way or another, you'll deal with looking at numbers and income moving up and down. What you're able to relate to, having that a good solid understanding, is that you're able to relate to why things are going up and down. You know exactly what's happening in the field. You might not know the bolt and nut, but at a macro level, you understand that, okay, these are the things which are impacting the business, which some of our colleagues might not actually have that view on. So yeah. John, don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I guess two angles. One, I would absolutely subscribe to the view of, if you want to be a professional engineer, stay focused on really developing your expertise and your experience in engineering. Completely agree with Graham. I know there is a huge temptation, and we're all human beings. We want to progress, we want to move up the ladder, kind of thing, in many cases anyway. But I would say absolutely, in the early stage of your career, focus on getting breadth of experience and depth of experience in engineering. But then I think at some point early on in your career, you've got to decide, where you want to go. If you want to remain an expert, then stick with the engineering disciplines. But if you do want to move up the ladder and branch out maybe into other areas, then you do need to get that financial experience pretty quickly. Because for me, I still recruit many engineers as engineers, but I recruit quite a lot of engineers into broader roles. And one of the gaps that I see frequently for people who want to take more broader-based management roles is what I would call a lack of commercial acumen, financial understanding. So, again, it's back to the, decide what you want to do, where you want to go. If you want to stay engineering, then stay focused on the technical disciplines. If you want broader, then you definitely do need to get some financial education.
Maybe right. I could build on that a little bit, John, because I like what you're saying. I think it's important. There's a tendency to think that a business studies is going to get me where I want to go. I don't think that's necessarily the right first steps. I think the right first steps are some of the softer skills. So being able to lead a discussion, being able to have a presentation the right way, being able to present an argument in a constructive manner, being able to encourage others within the organization and team to work with you the right way. Those are sort of soft skills that I think can be intertwined into, and I think they are intertwined in a lot of cases, into engineering courses to encourage people to develop those skills, because those skills you use no matter whatever discipline you're in. I do agree with what you're saying on the commercial acumen. I also agree with you that engineers I find quite often are lacking a bit of commercial acumen and are focused on trying to design the best possible solution, and the cost doesn't matter. But in the real world, cost is a very important requirement. So I think that's probably something that universities, polytechnics, whatever, could build more into their courses, this underlying knowledge of what cost means and how cost is important, and why one approach is more expensive and therefore perhaps not as desirable. And if you can find a less expensive solution to deliver the same result, that's actually a better, that's a better product. Yeah.
So let me be devil's advocate and turn this round on you again. Can an engineer become a businessman later in life? I think we've kind of agreed that that's a possibility. But what about the other way around? Can someone who's done business studies or economics or some other good degree, but maybe in a totally different non-technical side, could they become an engineer?
Could they become a doctor? I don't think so. If they were, would you go to them? I don't think so.
I agree with John entirely. I think there's, if you want to be an engineer, you've actually got to go through the training. There's your qualification is a mark of that you have taken the time to learn those skills. Can an engineer be a businessman? Absolutely. Well, I like to think I'm a businessman. I like to think I succeeded in that. And I was an engineer. I'm an engineer. Can an engineer do accounting? I would say the answer to that is probably yes, with a little bit of the right training. But an accountant become an engineer, I think the answer to that is very unlikely. So I think an engineering degree could bring you a lot of skills in a lot of different ways, and those mathematical skills, which at the end of the day are the fundamentals of engineering, are essential in many different competencies that are required to run businesses or to do research or any of those things.
So I think we're kind of saying that it doesn't really, if you are an economist, for example, or a political scientist, and you wanted to become an engineer at some later point in your career, you pretty much got to start again and do an engineering degree or engineering training of some sort. Is that what we're saying?
Correct. The only little piece of difference I would say to that is someone has been a technician working in the field or working in the workshop or built himself up and built his experience up that way. I do actually believe they can become engineers. I think there is a need to sort of formalize that at some point a little bit. It doesn't need to be crazy, but I think they can become very good contributors in the engineering world and can be very helpful and bring their experience to bear in a different way in that engineering world.
Chee, am I right in thinking that was kind of the route that you took to become an engineer, sort of?
Sort of, yeah. And I think probably it's worth calling out this as well. When I first graduated, there's this thinking that I'm an engineer now. No, you're just an engineering graduate. Being an engineer requires a whole lot more training. Believe it or not, my first job, I was, and I was fortunate enough. I was given the opportunity to go and train with the guys out in the workshop. So I was fixing valve. I was, I finished my master's, but I was fixing valve. Right, I was screwing bolts and all the thing, basic stuff. But actually, if I were to look back, it's that appreciation as well. We've always studied theory. You probably haven't done it before. So how would you know how easy or difficult it is? And when someone says to you that, no, we can't do it, well, you say, well, wait a minute, I've done that. No, we can do it. So, that, and I think that was the point when I start to started my journey into becoming an engineer, you know, so I think that's the big distinction for me.
Yeah, no, and that's so I'm completely with you, Chee, because again, that was sort of my career experience. But I do think, you know, we should think about engineering as a parallel with medical doctors. You know, you've going sort of back to the first question, you've got to have that high level of basic academic ability, and that's just a starting point. That's your ticket. That gets you through the door. You've then got to get that practical experience. You know, somebody doesn't get a medical degree and start operating in surgery next week. You know, they spend several years on the ground following the experienced doctor around, learning the practicalities, learning the trade, you know, plus a whole bunch of practical experiences along the way. I think most of us did the sort of monitored professional development scheme. We worked with very smart, capable engineers. We gained experience over a number of years, going through a whole bunch of different experiences, and ultimately became chartered engineers. And to me, you know, that it's, you know, is it a long, hard road? Some would say yes. If you enjoy it, it's not that hard and it's not that long. It's enjoyable.
So I would encourage anybody to go on the MPDS scheme, Monitored Professional Development Scheme. Any of you young guys, I did it as well. It is the best way to become an engineer, in my view. You get a mentor who you can talk to regularly. You have to report to them regularly and talk about what you're doing. And over a period of 5 years, you gain a great deal from doing that. So I would really recommend that to anybody, just as an aside. There's a comment in here. Interesting comment. Hi, I think that gaining some financial background early on is better than pursuing business studies at an early stage. Yep, I think we're kind of that sort of thought. I know my old boss always used to say to us, you designers, put down your pencils. I've got to sell this. So there's definitely a balance to be made there, that you do need to understand a little bit about cost for sure. Let me see, there's another question here. Here's an interesting one. What are the current demands in the industry that companies favor in applicants? So, you know, what do we look for today? For example, in terms of skills, knowledge, networking, what's the most important? Is it your sort of engineering knowledge, general knowledge, networking, other skills, problem solving? I saw that was mentioned in an earlier question, logic, creativity. If you can demonstrate that in your interview or on your CV, is that valued over and above some of your engineering training, or it's one goes with the other, or what are your thoughts?
I'm going to jump in if I can. So I don't think things have actually changed that much from many years ago when, you know, some of us were out there as budding young engineers and some of you weren't born. And today, I actually don't think it's changed that much what we're looking for. I believe the tools have changed. I know the tools have changed. I believe the experience that you have in using those tools has completely changed. Yeah, I know when I started, we didn't even have a computer in the department I was working with. I used to have a drawing board, you know, just like Andy. Yeah, we drew in pencil. Yeah, actually we drew in ink. It was even worse. On
linen.
Yeah, exactly. And you learn some different skills. But when you were hiring people, it was the same thing you were looking for. You're looking for some solid fundamentals, a knowledge of problem solving, and then that attitude, which I think a lot of the softer skills come through and support the right way. And I think that's still the same today. You know, people get very wrapped up on I can do this programming or this, you know, this whatever. It's great. It's fantastic because it shows an enthusiasm and an ability to learn, but it's an ability to learn. Just like Chee was saying, when you get into your first job, you start from ground level. Your degree has got you through the door. Now you have to actually learn how to do the job. And that is something most engineers coming out of school don't understand. Most of them think they're going to walk in and it's going to all happen and they're just going to be able to do it all. They're not. So those of you that are a little bit anxious about that, don't be. The right thing is to go in and ask a lot of questions and ask questions the right way, intelligently, and that will actually help position you as somebody who wants to learn and somebody who has that ability to learn. And that, I think, is more important. So it's always a tough thing when you bring in people who think they're above that, they've already learned it all. Those are really the hardest people to integrate into your organization. And they always take a fall somewhere in the passage, and then you have to kind of pick them up and drag them along. Like, when you get an opportunity to get your hands dirty, to actually feel what it is like to torque up whatever you're torquing up, or to insert the seals the right way, that is invaluable experience. And it's something that nobody can ever take away from you. That's just so valuable.
Yeah. Probably just to add on what Graham's saying, I think kind of goes back to the earlier point we talk about, where no experience is a bad experience. Just embrace it, and you never know what you're learning today when it will come back and help you. Absolutely, be humble, and be ready to learn. I mean, I definitely feel that I'm still learning every day.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it's a lifelong thing.
Mm-hmm. Now, and just to add to what Graham and Chee have said, I mean, for me, one of the sort of traits that I always look for is people who are curious. Because to me, the best engineers are the people that are curious, the people who want to know how it works and why it works. And again, for me, if you see those kind of traits coming through in people, that's the thing that avoids what Graham was talking about versus the people who think they know all the answers when they come in. The people who are always asking the questions, searching, trying to find out.
There's an interesting comment in the chat box which actually reminds us that actually to become a professional engineer now, I don't think the mature route of doing an IMechE or an engineering council exam is still a valid route. I think you have to get a degree. So whether you get one early or whether you come into engineering later on, you're going to still need to get an engineering degree at some point in time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to move on to the next question. In fact, Juan Ho and I were talking the other day, or earlier today, actually, about student apprenticeships, about getting sponsorship. And I was telling him how valuable it can be thought of. So, and I know you, John, you did a student apprenticeship. I did one. Student apprenticeships, you might want to just explain, is a little bit different to being sponsored from perhaps what we did. Do you think this is a good way to start? And what about it takes up all your holidays? You don't get, you have to, after vacation time when everybody else is swanning around the world with a backpack, you're working in a factory or working on site or in a nuclear power plant or whatever you're doing. Do you think that's a good system to try for?
Is that question to me, Andy?
Yes, John. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's a absolutely brilliant system. Sadly, there's not so many, apprenticeships or student apprenticeships around. Unfortunately, a lot of companies have pulled back because it is a big investment and generally has a high attrition rate. But it is something that I think we as business people need to encourage and push our companies to do more of. Anybody who can find those opportunities, I would say, grab them in a heartbeat. Absolutely. If you want to whine and complain about working through 3 months through the summer, then it's probably not for you. For those of us that have got the disposition that actually we get a big kick out of doing that kind of thing and create a lot of fun in the process, it's absolutely perfect solution. So for me, if you want to be a professional engineer, if you want to learn a lot and get a lot of experience up front, don't miss it.
Yeah.
Hui Shen, do you want to ask Juan Ho the question on this one?
There's a question in the chat first. So the attendee asked, do you feel like the bar has moved for graduates? A diploma used to be sufficient, then it moved to BEng, being the desired, and now it feels like you have to have a MEng to even be seen.
Masters.
Yes. Can you all explain what is BEng and MEng? For those RP students that might not know also.
So you used to have to get a
Bachelor's
bachelor degree. That's what probably most of us with the grey highlights got. But now you have to get a master's degree as well in order to get an easy route anyway into engineering.
Bachelor's engineering mechanical and
Yeah.
master's engineering. Yeah.
Like my answer would be life is tough. The bar keeps moving up. Welcome to the real world.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I mean, seriously, you know, standards across the world do keep moving up. Competition increases. You know, the level of technology continues to increase. You know, as I said, whether you've got, you know, as you say, Andy, most of us started off or have a bachelor's, but have spent the last 20, 30, whatever years continuing to learn new tricks, new technology, etc., etc. So, I mean, it is the way of the world.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think the reality as well is that education is becoming more accessible to most people, so you get bigger pool of people, and when you go out to apply for a job, you know, yes, I would say that having the highest degree might not mean that you would be most successful at work, but at least again it shows a level of ability, let's put it this way. Yeah, I think definitely, especially with, you know, if you think about it this way, the knowledge that we're learning over the years has, you know, expanded so much, and then with a 4 years degree, really, you know, can you really learn it all? 3 years? I don't know how many years this days. So you probably need to push more, condense more. So yeah, masters, I wouldn't be surprised, you know.
I guess you probably did a master's, did you, Chee?
Yes, I didn't do a master. I didn't do MIMechE. I did a master philosophy. Yeah, slightly different. Yeah,
but you have to do a master's level qualification of some sort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Another interesting comment come in. It's a recommendation. Find a mentor to guide you through your engineering career. It will give you the confidence in the decisions you make. That's a very good comment, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Finding, and it's probably not one mentor that's going to last with you throughout your career. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you form a fantastic relationship. Often it will be different people through your career will support, mentor you, tutor you, however you want to call that. Be somebody who is not your boss that you can go to and have a chat with and discuss how you want to approach something or not approach something, or just seek some advice and guidance into what's the right direction to take forward. Is fantastic. Preferably, you want somebody who's going to be a little bit grumpy with you and tell you the hard truths, because you need your mentor to tell you the hard truth. Yeah, there's no point sugarcoating it. Yeah. And, you know, doesn't mean you can't have a beer together, right? But it's always important to get that hard truth told to you the right way. I've been very fortunate through my career. I've had 5 or 6 people I would consider to be mentors that have helped me through different stages of my career. They've been absolutely invaluable to that continued learning. Once you've got through the formal process, whatever that might look like, whatever that qualification might be today, and once you've gone through your professional qualifications and you got yourself into your chartered status, now, when you start out as a young graduate, you think that's a very long path, but you know, once you've been there for 25 years, you look back in it and say, well, it was a long time ago. you still need that mentoring. You still need that help. Yeah, and still today, I mean, if someone can give me advice, I'm very, very interested to take that advice. Yeah.
I got a question. So how do you find a mentor? Yeah.
Great question. It's a great question.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you find them. I'm like Graham. I've been very fortunate and had 2 or 3 really, really good mentors at various stages of my career. And to be honest, they happened. You know, because to Graham's point, I think, you know, there's got to be the right chemistry. So, you know, you've got to keep your eyes open, but you'll find them.
You will.
Kogi would like to make a comment, but just before I'm just going to remind everybody once again about the IMechE MPDS scheme. You get given your first mentor. That's a good start already. Kogi, you had some thoughts? Your vast experience of engineering, more than the rest of us?
No, I just want to comment on the mentoring. Finding a mentor is a bit of a luck, but also it depends on you as well. And this is why when I took over this job of the chairman, I started to bring the young members and the older members together. And when we get into the live situation, you will start talking and you'll probably find mentors. If somebody comes to us and says, I want a mentor, we haven't got a magic wand which you can wave and conjure up a mentor. No, right? So you will also have to be on the lookout. Mm-hmm. And all we can do is create the atmosphere in which you can be looking. I'll wait till the end for my further comments.
Don't forget
to that,
you need to
Coach,
learn how to manage. Go on, Graham.
Sorry, Andy. Sorry, because I think you're absolutely right. It's up to the individual to seek out a mentor to some extent, or to make it known that they are interested and receptive to having a mentor try to help them. I think that's an important piece. When you're working in a company, right, often that mentor is going to be a different piece of that company somewhere, and that's actually probably a very good thing, because a lot of the things you're going to want to talk about could well be more company culture than pure technology type things. Technology type things you can find people to talk to. It's the company culture type things and how to navigate this that you really need some help on, because it's new for you and it's new for everyone at some point in time. And I think that's important. Each company's got its different culture, so to have a mentor from a different place help you with that piece would be complicated. But if you are making it known that you're interested in having a mentor and to help you with certain aspects, I think most companies will respect that and be quite appreciative of the fact that you're thinking that way and you're opening yourself up for that opportunity.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, you also have to learn how to manage your boss, and a mentor can coach you in how to do that. And that's something that's serious. You really do have to learn how to do that in your work when you go out to work. I guess you've all had those sorts of experiences. So we haven't got a great deal of time left, so I'm going to jump into this particular question now, and I'm going to throw this really back to the young engineers who are listening. The question is, do young engineers still like to get their hands dirty, or do they just want to sit behind a computer? Does the current degree system encourage this? Who would like to take this first? I mean, who's... Do you see young engineers that like to get their hands dirty? Juan Ho, go on then.
Well, for me, I like to get into the small robotics. I would like try to automate stuff. I would like to write out codes to perform some functions, such as I was thinking of making like an automated system under my own bed, where I can link up to other light source, like other sources like light, the or maybe fans, where you can make a voice recognition robot to hear your comments and perform or do your bidding for you. And that's
So Graham,
yeah.
that's very good, actually. I mean, I always enjoyed taking things to pieces when I was youngster. Bikes, car engines. My bedroom was littered with bits and pieces and oil and all sorts of rubbish. You know, I love taking things apart to find out how they work. But Graham, I mean, engineers today, do they really want to go down on the shop floor? You've got a lovely factory over there in Tuas that we had a very good technical visit to a couple of weeks ago. Do engineers like to spend all day and every day down on the shop floor fixing problems and doing all the necessary tasks that have to be done in that environment?
Quite honestly, no. Very simply, I think most engineers that I come across these days, young engineers, are perhaps inhibited by that because they haven't had that opportunity through the right way. I mean, I think when we were growing up, you were able to fix your car, right? Nowadays, you can't fix your car. You need a computing degree to operate a car. It's a completely different environment. You know, like yourself, Andy, I would take apart the carburetor, clean the carburetor, put it back together again, and hope my car would get me to school the next day. Yeah, those are the sort of things that we were able to do. I think the opportunities to do those things are less obvious today than they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago. That said, I think you can find those opportunities if you put your mind to it. You know, so just like Juan was saying, you know, there's a slightly different spin to it, maybe more of an automation spin or a robotic spin. People are interested. That's great. That's absolutely fantastic, because that's definitely skills that are attractive and interesting as we go forward. But the pure mechanical skills are also very important. Understanding how to tighten a bolt circle. So few engineers can understand that, and yet it's one of the most basic skills there is out there, and it's one of the things, if you do wrong, causes chaos. And and so I think I like to sort of lead my premises as I lead by example. So you know, I've got a story for you. When I was started out in the production role that I had at one point. So I was living in France, Scots guy, living in France, spoke some French but not very good. In charge of a production shop of 60 guys in a machine shop. All of them were older than me. All of them had more experience than me. Who knows why I was given that opportunity and that job to do. They certainly didn't. I had to earn their respect. That was a very difficult process. I spent long hours on the shop, and I did not sit in my office. I spent most of my day walking the shop floor with them, asking them questions, getting them to explain things to me, building a relationship with them. And it kind of culminated when one of our critical machines broke down. And it was a big old lathe. It was a dirty old, big old lathe, and it completely broke down. And the operator was there, and the maintenance guy was there, and they're swearing away in French. And those are the words I could actually understand. Yeah, they're swearing away in French. And I come across and say, "What's wrong, guys?" And they say, "Oh, this is broken. I said, we're gonna have to do this." I said, "Okay, well, what's the problem?" So, I need to go off my shift. I've been on my shift for 9 hours. I've got to go off. I can't stay on legally. I need some. And this guy needs someone to help him. I said, "That's fine. I'll help." And they said, "What?" And they just looked at me as if, "What good are you going to be?" So I went off and got my coveralls on, got my gloves out, went back and got into the mess and said, "You just tell me what to do, what to lift, what to hold, how to help. I'll be your helper, and I'll get you through this. And together we'll get this machine back on track." And we worked at that machine for about 12 hours and got it working again. And after that, the attitude in the shop completely changed. It was like a light switch had gone on. They said, "This guy's actually prepared to get dirty, get in amongst this, and help us achieve, rather than just stand there and shout at us. He's actually happy to get in here and make it happen." I think that was one of those eureka moments. I didn't plan it. I didn't break the machine so I could do it. It just kind of happened. The opportunity arose, and I grabbed the opportunity and managed to not make too big a fool of myself as I was doing it. So, those are the sort of things I think you need to be thinking about as you go forward. It's opportunity will be there. You can take that opportunity. But if you've never taken something apart with your hands and you've never had any experience, you're going to be very intimidated trying to do something like that. You're going to be very nervous about stepping into that environment. And you could even be actually quite dangerous stepping into that environment. So I really think it is important to get those opportunities and to learn those things. Even if it's putting your bike back together again, you can still do that. Yeah.
Sounds like we have another event of reminiscences. I can also tell some stories of being in MRT, SMRT, Bishan Depot all night, but I'm not going to tell you that one now. Kogi, you wanted to make a comment. You're on mute.
You offered, I raised my hand and I've made my comment. Maybe I should lower my hand. I'll wait,
Okay, all right.
wait till you say in the end.
Okay. Do we feel that young engineer? Let me ask this question. Singapore's trying to encourage entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurial businessmen is a big thing. We really want to get that going in Singapore. It's important for Singapore. We all understand why. Do we think that starting off as an engineer is a good way to become an entrepreneur one day, or are there better ways? Who would like to take that one as a start? Juan Ho, would you like to be an entrepreneur one day and run your own business? Put you on the spot.
Well, it does really sound appealing. You can be your own boss. You can self-direct what you like to do. You can also like fund a project that you would really aspire to see, or even think of like helping others with your product and such. However, it also comes with its own risk, which is somewhat unappealing to me, as it may create my downfall. And also, it also requires a certain investment to it to be able to create your own company, especially when you are someone from middle class who does not really have the money to start a company. You have to go for a loan from a bank, and that loan will become a risk. And if you can't pay back the loan, you will be in debt. So yeah.
I like how Junho thinks and structure his thought. He's a very engineer person. He thinks about the risk. An entrepreneur will probably jump first before thinking, where am I jumping? I think engineer will make good entrepreneurs. But of course, we would as engineer, we would be so concerned about the risk. Quite rightly, that's how we are trained, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But I think being engineers put you at a really strong position, because, and interesting, I had a conversation with someone who has gone out and started his own business, and his advice is that, well, yes, you know, running your own business is fantastic, but you should always start off working for someone first, and then you know how it is like really running a business. Running a business is, you know, it's quite difficult. Think about the small things that you might not see in a company. Buying printer toner, you have to run to Challenger to do it yourself, change the light bulbs. There's a small little things that you don't see, but if you're running your own business, better be prepared to do it yourself. So yeah, I think, you know, as engineers, we're definitely in a good position. It's just planning it out and taking the leap of faith.
John, would you like to have been an entrepreneur?
If I'd have liked to have been an entrepreneur, I'm sure I would have been an entrepreneur. No, I mean, for me, you know, can engineers be entrepreneurs? Yes, absolutely. There's probably thousands of them around the world. I don't think it's about being an engineer or not being an engineer. I sort of disagree a little bit with Chee in the sense that, you know, I think it's more about personal traits. I'm a big believer, you know, when you think about your career, my career, I've heard so many people give career advice of, you must do this or you must do that. For me, the only career advice I've ever offered to anybody, including my two sons, was figure out what you're passionate about and try and make a career out of it, and ideally make some decent money doing it. Because, and there's some people that are passionate about being an entrepreneur. Fantastic. They'll probably be successful, or they're more likely to be successful. There's some people that are passionate about being professional engineers, and they're almost certainly going to be good professional engineers. So for me, it's not, can I be, can't I be? It's, yeah, you can be, but is that what you want? Is that what you're passionate about?
So Graham, you and I have probably changed direction in our companies a number of times, and there have been, certainly in my career, entrepreneurial type opportunities pop up that you have to start taking risks and so on. Ever come across that sort of thing in your career?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So most, many times, I think is the right answer to that. So I am quite an entrepreneurial person. That's my nature, which is probably why I'm involved in taking the direction I've taken in the company. Like Juan, I'm a little bit more nervous about gambling my own money. I'm fairly happy gambling the company's money. And but I think it's just also a question of what's the risk. So you're taking a risk assessment of where you're at and what's the right risk assessment. A good entrepreneur is a very good risk manager. A good entrepreneur is looking for the opportunity and making that opportunity happen. There's plenty of opportunities to be entrepreneurial without having to go and start up your own company to do that. And there's plenty ways to take that forward the right way. Not everybody has that entrepreneurial trait, and they shouldn't try and do it if it isn't in their blood, right? Because they will be unhappy. Yeah, and I think being happy and getting fulfillment from what you're doing is absolutely essential. We can categorize people by their skill sets, their competencies, but the way they think as well. And I do believe that is a very important piece of what you do as a manager, as you try and join those together the right way to get a very balanced team. When you've got a balanced team that can support each other, it's very successful. Yeah, so entrepreneurial things that I've done, I've bought companies, I've made acquisitions, I've opened businesses in some of the most strange places in the world. I've opened businesses in Chad, Gabon, Congo, Algeria, Kazakhstan, where else? Many others, Kurdistan, many different places. I've opened companies, not in my name. I happen to be the general manager of most of them, but in the company's name for us to be able to do business in those locations. So I've got a vast experience of how do you manage foreign taxes, how do you stay out of jail in foreign countries. Very important trait as an entrepreneur, staying out of jail. Yeah. It's not for the faint-hearted. It's for those that enjoy that risk and that excitement. And a lot of engineers, quite frankly, will not enjoy that, and a lot of people don't enjoy that. Not just engineers, but if that's in your blood and that's something you want to do, can you do that as an engineer and be very helpful and successful in your company? Absolutely.
Graham, thank you. That's a fantastic piece of advice to finish on. So entrepreneurs are not just single guys are running there, starting up their own little companies, but you can actually do it within your own organization if you are that type of person. So that's something for everybody to think about. That, I think, will have to conclude our questions. I mean, there's a great comment in here. Joining the IMechE is probably one of the best decisions you can ever make in your career, and I think that's right. That's certainly true of all of us, I think, on this webinar today. And get involved. So I'm now going to ask Kogi if he'd like to get involved and give us a few wise words as our branch chairman at the end of our webinar, before I ask Hui Shen to propose a vote of thanks to our panelists. Kogi. Kogi's frozen.
Oh, I'm
Okay,
frozen.
we might just.
Can you hear me?
Oh, you're back again.
Yes,
Okay,
you're back
Kogi.
again.
Right, okay. I want to make it in two parts, if you'll allow me. The first part is I followed a completely different path compared with what Graham and the three panelists have said. I say when I talk to my people, you slice me anywhere and you'll see engineer written on it, like the Blackpool Rock. I did nothing else but engineering. But I got to the top of that tree. So you don't have to have business acumen. You don't have to have, I did have a very good feel for cost as a part of the engineering, but I did nothing of business studies or anything. I always did engineering and nothing else. The fundamentals I learned, I use even today when I'm designing my projects. I know very little of engineering, but I know it well. So don't be afraid to use your engineering skills to progress your career. My company created the position of chief engineer for me so that they could give me some more money. Right? So don't be afraid, but do your engineering well and deliver. Apply and deliver. Those are that's first part of the input I wanted to make. Second part of the input I wanted to make was, I've learned enough. If I went for an interview today, I probably would succeed. If I went for an interview yesterday, I probably would not have succeeded. So I am totally in awe with the quality of the questions and the answers. So I would like to, I'm glad I was not on the panel because no way. So I'm very, very grateful for you guys to take your time out. Chee, I know John and Graham very well, but I'm also impressed by Lee, Juan, Ho. What are you doing in an institution of engineers? Come and join us at IMechE if you're not already part of it. And with that, I would like to add my thanks to Andy, Bishan, and all the panelists, and all the other people in the background who've been working to make this a success. So I'll conclude this.
Thank you, Kogi. I'll now pass over to Huishen just to conclude the webinar.
So this brings us to the end of our webinar today. We hope you have found it interesting and enlightening. RP Student Chapter and IMechE Singapore branch would like to thank panelists Graham Horn, John Smith, Chee Tan, and our own Lee Jen Ho for taking time out of their busy schedules to share with us their experiences and their valuable opinions with us. We look forward to all of you joining us at our next event. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed.
Did you want to take a picture then, Huishen?
Yes. Oh yeah,
Anybody
I
would
forgot
like-
about it.
Anybody would like to be in a group picture, please put your cameras on.
It's like everybody's been very shy.
Yeah,
Just us then.
it's all right.
Anyone else? Turn on